Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here representing Jason Blaha Strength and Fitness, and I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about the perks or benefits of training a lift 3 times a week. But a quick reminder, if you guys will please click like down below, be greatly appreciated. If you're not subscribed or following, please do so, and if you'll be kind enough to drop a comment down below, I would appreciate it. Thank you so much. So when I make this statement and I want to discuss these benefits, I want to be clear, there's always a trade-off. Right? There's no free lunch. And so I'm not saying that this is the best, that this is the way. So again, people interpret it that way when I try different approaches or discuss them. Oh, he's saying this is the best. No, I'm not. It's not what I'm saying. There are pros and cons. Now, the real obvious one, and I think this should stand out immediately, of the negative before we discuss what you can get out of this, you're going to be more prone to overuse. Okay. In other words, if you are bench pressing or squatting 3 times a week, is a relatively advanced lifter, not talking about as a novice, all novice programs have you do that, you are at a higher risk of overuse problems. You're at a higher risk of inflaming stuff, beating stuff up, eventual overuse injuries if you're not careful. Okay, so we do need to be aware of that, right? The total weekly loads tend to be higher on a set for set basis. It's going to be less time for that movement pattern to recover. So yeah, you are having some potential for higher tendon inflammation and things like that with overuse. So just be aware that is a potential drawback. And for many people, it's a drawback they don't want to deal with. So let's get that out of the way. But again, as you guys know, these days, at the time of this video, I squat, bench, and deadlift 3 days a week. Now, I don't do any real lifting other than bands or some abs or stuff on the off days. I just do cardio and running. So I have 3 lifting days and 3 days dedicated to running. So that being said, a lot of my big lifts are being hit 3 times a week and with, relatively heavy weights. Not crazy, but, doing rep work of 500 on a deadlift 3 times a week. So at my age. So let's talk about that. So why would we want to do that? What would be the advantages versus, say, even splitting the same volume up? Well, number one, more practice, right? You are performing an exercise more frequently. Okay. And this is before we get into perks of whole body and detraining week to week, or something forces you to slide training down. We've done whole videos on that for full body, but let's just discuss the frequency end. Right, because you may not be doing this on a 3-day full body. I happen to be, not saying that's the only way. So back over to that point, more practice. Okay, we all get that. We all understand that. Okay, more practice and more time to recover to get quality sets. Sometimes it's hard to do 9 sets in a row. So if we're talking maybe 3 sets 3 times a week versus, say, 9 total sets. Just using that as an example. Some people argue with the deadlift because I only do 1 set a lot of times. 1 set 3 times a week. I think that one's going to be really apparent, the difference. You guys all know you're not replicating that load on the deadlift. Right? If it's a hard set, it's real difficult to replicate that load. You can do it 3 times a week though. But let's come back over to the point of the practice. You're more fresh when you get to the lift each time. You're not fatigued from doing a bunch of other sets on it. You can get really high quality sets in it because you're doing them frequently. That motor pattern is just not detraining, right? This allows you to get really good on the neural drive aspect. So that can't be discounted. I mean, perfect example. You do heavy deadlifts 3 times a week. You are going to train neural drive and strength, like the neurological side is going to be through the roof. You're going to be peaked real fast on almost everything just because of the neural drive from that big lift. But we also get the practice of the exercise, especially if it's fairly heavy, right? We're not talking about doing really high reps when we say this. Now you start talking 10, 12 reps, form to grades, it's not the same exercises. You're not getting the same practice that we are when we're talking about lower reps. Now, some of the other benefits will still come from high reps. Neural drive and technique, not so much. Like doing a 10 rep squat, it does not train you to do 1 to 3 reps in terms of the technique. It just doesn't. So again, so that we understand that. All right, so that's going to be that. Next thing, how about total workloads? We all know that if you split the same volume across 3 days versus, say, 1, you're going to do more weight set per set, rep for rep. In other words, your 3-rep sets, your 5-rep sets, even your 10-rep sets. You guys already see where we're going with this. 3 sets of 3 even on a deadlift versus 1 set of 3 times a week. You're going to move more total weight. You start talking 3 sets of a big exercise versus spread out over the week versus 9, you're going to lift a heavier weight. You're going to get more workload, more tonnage for your total sets if you spread them out more. We all know this. All right, this is more total potential for workload. Okay, this is a good thing. All right, this is a good thing. Could be some hypertrophic benefits to that. There's definitely going to be a neural drive and neurological benefit to that because we're moving just heavier weight in general. But you see where we're about to go? How about the overuse end? We're moving heavier weight in general. So we talk about the negative with the overuse. That's a big driver. All right, what about the muscle growth? We can make those cases for improved muscle protein synthesis. That's up in the air. I've seen people say, oh, well, this meta-analysis debunked that and this other, but we have all these other studies showing the individual, and then we still have some studies showing the benefit. Like, this is still a point of contention, even in scientific literature. Okay? But there's still a general trend in some of the literature to show slightly better muscle growth from those higher frequencies with the volume split up. There's definitely data supporting it, particularly because intra-set workouts, there's a limit to the amount of muscle growth we can stimulate per workout. Because I think people forget that. The training does not cause us to grow. It sends a signal to the brain to cause us to grow. Right? The whole model of muscle damage being a driver of hypertrophy has been very heavily debunked even by scientists. Like, it's just not true. It just doesn't appear to be the actual case. It's a widely believed theory, but it's just not reality. So keep that in mind. It is that signal. So that same signal more frequently, right? Assuming we got sufficient workload to cause a good growth response, probably and definitely on some data limit. There's, again, some studies show it, some do not. Right? And that's a big point of contention. Possibly more muscle growth because of more muscle protein synthesis uptime. And it makes sense, hey, you train a muscle more often as long as it recovers, recovery being the operative term, probably has the potential for more growth. It makes sense. Common sense, and there's some data to support it. But again, in the context of recovery. So there are reasons why we might want to do this, because again, if we're talking about the muscle growing, well, the same exercise makes the same muscle grow, obviously, and that's kind of the point. Even doing the same lift, you're going to have that potential hypertrophic benefit. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.